welcome to the West. Today we're at Wanneroo, 35 k's north of Perth at Barbagallo Raceway for round 6 of the Shell Championship Series. And there's a bunch of questions to answer. Mark Skaife with a 14-point margin over Jason Bright, then Stephen Johnson, Russell Ingall, Marcus Ambrose, Stephen Richards, Greg Murphy, Glenn Seaton, Todd Kelly and Craig Lowndes just inside the top 10. And it was Paul Radisich who did a stunning lap, an all Ford front row, then Paul Morris, the first of the Holdens, Russell Ingall, Mark Skaife, Larry Perkins, Craig Lowndes, I mentioned, had to use his 2 sets of tyres just to get in there, then Greg Murphy, his teammate Todd Kelly and Jason Bright. Paul Radisich has pole, it's an all Ford front row, Seaton alongside him, then Paul Morris, the first of the Holdens, Russell Ingall, Mark Skaife, Larry Perkins, a good performance in the shootout for 6th, Craig Lowndes 7th and Greg Murphy for Kmart 8th.
Just a reminder, Craig Lowndes has not been beaten here in V8 Supercar. Could that change this weekend? Jason Bright still struggling with that HRT Commodore just outside actually in 10th position. Cameron McConville just outside the top 10, 11 Barbagallo. In 12th, Stephen Johnson, winner on the streets of Canberra. He's back in 14th. Paul Wheel up inside the top 20.
Mark Larkham having a difficult weekend with the ICS Ford. Marcus Ambrose had a misfire throughout practice qualifying and the shootout. It's been costly. He's down in 18th. Richards, Ellery, Bernard, Jason Richards from New Zealand, then John Faulkner and Tony Longhurst is 24.
Anthony Tratt and Bradley Jones start out at 26. Trevor Ashby and Paul Romano, the Holden Young line, back in 28th. Rodney Fawkes and Cameron McLean having problems in qualifying. 30th, Tony Ricciardello, a local, driving Mike Emery's car in 31st. And Daniel Miller, another lad from Perth, he's out of 32.
Paul Romano has been pushed away from the grid, as you can see in the background in the Holden Young Lions, entry car number 24. So he hasn't been able to take his position on the warm-up lap as we go on board with Marcus Ambrose, one of 6 competitors carrying onboard cameras for us this weekend. Ambrose has 3 cameras on board. Here's Mark Skaife with the VV camera.
Reigning champion, car Mark's talking about before the race. He was just saying everyone's struggling for grip out there, just can't quite get it handling the way he wants it. Paul Radisich, Shell Helix in-car camera, pole position. 2nd pole position since Simmons Plains in 1999.
4 cameras on board for Greg Murphy from New Zealand, carrying the camera for Kmart.
Murph, and here's Craig Lowndes, the man who has been unbeaten here in his V8 Supercar career. And he's got his work cut out for him this afternoon. He's back in 7th place. And keep in mind, there's no pit stops here where the Gibson Motorsport team can do the usual leapfrog. He's going to have to fight it out from the front.
Air is 21 degrees and that temperature is actually dropping a little at the moment. By comparison to practice qualifying and the shootout, this is the first time that we've actually seen cloud cover, and that will have some impact on the balance of the cars. Russell Ingall there taking position, and the word comes through that Paul Romano has some sort of a gearbox failure with the Young Lion EA Sports entry, and they're now wheeling him into pit lane.
The first corner here is going to be fun and games, isn't it? It's
so dominant, in fact. I'll just get to that in a minute. We check on the Ford race analysis at Barbagallo. 320 lap races, 48 kilometres the distance for each, 32 starters. Qualifying, look at that, 1 second covering 1st to 22nd on the grid. Last year's winner, of course, was Craig Lowndes, who started out of 7th today.
As you were saying there, probably being on the left-hand side of the road in the first corner, it's not a bad idea, is it?
It's not bad because you get a clean race line. We've got a green flag. The tail enders will start on the corner, the final corner. Revs build, 5 seconds is the signal. Radisich makes a great jump away from Seaton. Morris goes with him for 2nd, and Ingall will go down the inside as well. It's a tardy start from Glenn Seaton, who gets squeezed back out to 4th. Radisich off in a blinder.
Yeah, Seaton had better than he start last year. If you remember, he went on the grass and knocked his spoiler off, didn't he?
See if we get a clean start. That first turn has always been troublesome in the past. Looks like everyone's got through cleanly. 32 cars heading up the hill for the first time.
One of the Valvoline cars really crossed up on the run to turn 4. Wide of the race line here, it's very marbly and dirty. There's obviously a lot of sand around the location here. It blows onto the circuit, and because it's abrasive, it tends to knock the tyres around, and they leave marbles. There they are on the outside of turn 6 down there at Cold Corner.
Well, big improver this weekend is Paul Morris. He's starting to show some form on the streets of Canberra. Now he's followed on in WA, 2nd. Fast out of the box, got the jump on Glenn Seaton. Finds himself 2nd behind the Shell Ford as they swing onto the pit straight for the first time.
Oh, look at this, Ambrose down the inside of John Bell almost.
So a nice, clean start so far. Here's the queue as they come across the line. It's Radisich, Morris, Ingle, Glenn Seaton, Mark Scape, Larry Perkins, Greg Murphy in there too. Craig Lowndes, Todd Kelly, Jason Bright rounding out the top 10.
Right, you really can't afford to get offline, can you? See Ingle there, the back end of his thing hanging out. It's really dirty and dusty offline.
The other thing that happens, Barry, is that cars drag dirt up when they get wide on the curbing here, and that means the guy behind gets covered in rubbish and obviously loses grip. Standing lap time for Radisich was a 63.1. He was 0.5 quicker than Morris on the opening lap. On board with Ingle from row 2. Look at the wheel spin that Seaton gets, and then he quickly tries to cover, but it's not quick enough. Morris up the inside, Ingle up the inside. Glenn gets shuffled back out to 4th, and a little rattle on the door just for good measure.
So Paul Radisich just pumped it out a car length or 2 over Morris in 3rd. Russell Ingle in there. Then Seaton, Mark Scape, Larry Perkins, good start from the veteran. He's up in 6th.
You see the shot there as they came through the final corner of Scape coaxing the car around turn 7 as Stephen Johnson, the last round winner, tries to go up the inside of Paul Wheel with John Bow on the outside of him, and it's pretty slippery out there, JB.
I was talking to Stephen Johnson earlier in the weekend, and he said, yeah, it's been great to win Canberra, but he said what we have to do, what this team has to do is get some consistency in our performance. This has been so up and down, the speed and the performance of these Shell Fords throughout the year. They really need to get some consistency, particularly into their chassis. They're going to mount a strong challenge for the championship.
Tyres will be discussed in earnest all weekend because this place being abrasive, it's the first time that this control tyre has been used at this track. Last year, the new tyre that we now have was introduced after this round for the Clipsal 500. So many teams having to fiddle with their setups in order to get the sweet spot right. Look at the black clouds off in the distance here. And the sun can be very bad in the braking area as you go into turn 7 here. And Seaton now being attacked by by Scape.
Well, we said in the driver's briefing from the Driving Standards Observer, Colin Bond, they'll tolerate a little bit of blocking, but if a driver continually dives down the inside line, they'll be shown the bad sportsmanship flag. So Seaton have to watch it. The officials will be watching him in this tight battle. It's only a 20-minute sprint. Every position crucial.
The temperatures are in the last half an hour's dropped down 2 or 3 degrees. That's going to play right into the guy's hands that are really struggling. But everybody's struggling with tyres. And had this have been a really hot race, and the 2 races tomorrow have been later on really hot, they'd have been struggling. Oh, sorry.
Just dropped the wheel off the edge, and it's brought a lot of dust up as they came out of the bottom corner at cold corner turn 6. Scape looking threatening, trying to make ground under brakes as they come into the final corner. That next bunch is pretty tight as well. It contains, well, who have you got in there? Perkins, Murphy, Lowndes, Kelly.
Radisich is doing it nicely at the moment. 2.3 seconds the gap is built on Paul Morris. He's the fastest man on the track. A 58.56, the fastest lap so far for the Shell Ford driver.
Remember, this round does not involve compulsory pit stops. It's a square fight to the end. 20-minute races, 3 of them. And what you've got to fight with. Anthony Tratt's been shown a black flag, car number 75, the passenger's door, it keeps flapping open. So obviously he made contact with somebody in the opening lap or laps, and door isn't fastened, so he's going to have to come in and solve it. Here is Mark Scape having a look up the inside of Glenn Seaton. This time he's got a better run. Glenn's had a tardy run coming out. Mark just looks across.
He's got him too, cleaned him up on the climb out of Cold Turn. Critical to get a good run out of there. Look at this battle here, though.
And Lowndes is going to go up the inside.
Oh, big contact. Big hit in the front left guard for Lowndes.
Well, it wasn't anybody's fault, that was it? It was just luck of the draw.
And Kmart car fights back to hold position.
And if that made contact with the front left wheel, then it will inevitably have made some damage on the Lowndes car, maybe change the toe angles on the front left.
We'll try and get a look on the outside of the Lowndes car when we can. The Shell Helix replay of the Anthony Tratt situation.
Left door?
Yeah. So you can't drive around with the door flapping in the breeze like that, so he's going to have to bring that in and get that fixed.
Waving to the crowd, it's 1 for yes and 2 for no.
Meanwhile, back on board with Craig Lowndes. This is the classic indication of the old racing format, the 20-minute sprint. Once you get stuck back in the queue, you really pay a penalty. And look at this battle now. Russell Ingle's got plenty of speed on board. The Castrol Commodore has a sniff up the inside of Paul Morris. Not quite close enough. Morris wants to fight. They're going to argue as they go down the pit straight, but Paul Morris gets good acceleration out of the turn on the main straight. He moves across to cover his line, and Russell Ingall gets his nose shut off.
He gave him a little bit of a tap down there in the final corner. He's giving him another little love bite just as they go through turn 1.
Starting to become, I think, Neil, you say the cork in the bottle. There's a few cars starting to bunch up behind Paul Morris now in the Big Kev Racer.
And when you start to struggle here, it's because your rear tyres go away. That's what was happening with Glenn Seaton. He got a bad run coming out of turn 6, and it looks like Morris has got the same disease with his car at the moment. If you started with a car that was squarely or neatly balanced and turning well, and inevitably goes away from you here, you almost have to have another setting for the race to be gentle on the rear tyres.
So cars starting to queue up behind the Big Kev Racer. Let's have a look at the replay of the Lowndes incident. We might see the contact here. Boof.
There you go.
Didn't look that big from inside. It certainly looked like a bigger impact from the outside.
Yes, got it.
So Ingall down the inside of Paul Morris, who's starting to struggle now.
And Scape's going to have a run at him as well. Scape's got a better run off the final corner, and he'll try and crisscross him at the other end, but Morris, as a wake-up, covers his ground well. Seaton still watching brief in behind in 5th. Perkins, Murphy, Lowndes, Kelly, Bright, McConville, Barbagallo, Johnson, the last round winner, 13th. Then Tander, Wheel, Bow, Ambrose, Stephen Richards, Ellery and Bernard. That's your top 20 with Larkham just outside.
Well, Radicic, look at the time starting to slip now. He's out to the low 59s. Everyone else in the 60-second bracket. This is what Mark Scaife forecast very early on in race 1. He thought the times would pump out to the minutes.
It's a six-second lead he's got, which is pretty good, isn't it?
Scaife's really threatening. You can hear Mark just paddling the throttle a little bit through turn 4 and 5 over the top of the hill. He's just waiting for the car to settle down, waiting for the rear of the car just to sit so that he can get some drive into it. He'll look under brakes down here once again. It's an uphill brake, and Morris leaves room, and he's up there.
Former teammates Paul Morris and Mark Scaife. Morris, of course, joined the Holden Racing team a couple of years back, helped Mark Scaife and Craig Lowndes to that strong result in the Shell Championship Series. He's on his own now in the Big Kev car, hard under brakes as they come up to turn 1, but not able to fight back on the Holden Racing team driver.
It was a smart move from Morris because, given the fact that he knew that he was starting to struggle a little bit, by not running the defensive line, it takes a bit of the pressure out of the situation, and therefore not as likely to get a whack in the tail and spun off and can hold at least a strong position. Whereas if you dispute sometimes when your car's going away from you, particularly early in the race, it's a high-risk game that you're playing because you can end up in the weeds.
Got to say, it's the most outstanding performance from this Queensland-based team. They haven't been in V8 supercar racing very long. They've got quite an experienced crew. Arch McMurray, one of the veterans of touring car racing in Australia, preparing the engines, and Paul Sepranich, the man who worked with the Stone Brothers operation last year, is now on board as chief engineer. And keep in mind, they're still running the ex-Holden Racing Team Commodore. Their first in-house built car is yet to come.
Seaton up the inside and makes the move, and Larry will go with him, and the Kmart cars are in there as well. So Morris is really losing rear grip on this car at the moment. And getting
this. I got the cross.
He's under siege, isn't
getting shuffled down the order. There's a queue of them, and they'll box his ears and all run through the inside. Lowndes is in there as well.
So Paul Morris just losing positions, hand over fist. Here comes the Kmart car. He wants to argue as they come up through the S's, but he has to give way. That car really struggling for rear end grip now.
Well, he's been sensible about it. At least he's not getting in everybody's way. He's letting people pass
He's battling as hard as he can, but once you find yourself getting shoved and elbowed by the pack, they'll maul you.
The hardest thing to come to terms with these cars is running a soft suspension setup, which they seem to like. Paul Morris's car obviously performing very well in qualifying trim, but under race conditions, just giving the tyres too much of a hard time.
51 is Murphy, then it's Perkins, then Lowndes, then Kelly. There's Morris. Watching station there at the moment, but it looks like it's settled down, Barry.
Yeah, you look at Radicic's time, he's 0.6 of a second, 0.6 of a second quicker than anyone, which is massive.
Bright and Morris in vigorous dispute for a minor placing here. It's 9th and 10th, and Bright really looking for every opportunity. Barbagallo behind him, who was quick in practice early. Then Stephen Johnson. Cameron McConville is the next man, just a couple of car lengths back. Then Wheel, John Bow and Stephen Richards. That gives you an idea of the layout. Turns 1, 2, 3. The left-hander into turn 4. Positive camber, uphill corner. A blind brow for 5. It's a fabulous shot. Gives you an idea of the layout of the circuit, and given the Saturday race, a very big crowd here.
You look at some of the guys low down the field. Is Bernard in 20th, Ellery in 19th, Ambrose.
Look at that, Larry Perkins way offline on the entry to Cold Corner. Craig Lowndes could see him drifting wide, took advantage. The Gibson Motorsport car picks up another spot.
Just listening to the radios, it doesn't seem to be anybody's complaining too much of tyre wear at the moment. Talking to the Bridgestone boys, they say this is the slipperiest track we go to because of the road base, and they're now finding that the rocks in the road base are all rounded off, so it's so slippery. But tyre wear will be a problem because of those same rocks. It's just tearing strips. How much will they have at the end of the race? We're only going to know when that comes around.
Paul Radicic is beautifully positioned at the front there. He's 9.5 seconds. He's demolishing this field. He's obviously very, very comfortable. And he's just being able to drive a nice, straight, conservative line as well. Protect those tyres.
Looking from the back of Craig Lowndes' car, he's in 6th at the moment. There's the 27-year-old at work. Old bloke, isn't he?
We used to call him the kid only a few years ago.
4 millimetres is the tread depth with these Bridgestone control tyres, and there's tread depth indicators on both sides of the tyre. And everybody will be having a long, hard look at the left rear in particular here. Corners like this are the ones that do the damage. A lot of horsepower going through the left-hand corner of the car. Climbing the hill, 600 horsepower. Don't forget to check out the V8 Supercar website, and that address is www for the World Wide Web, v8supercar.com.au. Lots of details about the series, the drivers, the teams, and also check out while you're online dreamdrive.tv. It's a fabulous game to play. If you haven't already looked at that site, then I'd recommend you do so. And you can... Oh, and Larry has gone in a big way down in turn 1. Locked up, got it all wrong. Something weird has happened there.
That was a dramatic exit from the track, wasn't it? I wonder if something's broken on that car.
Like I don't know whether my imagination looked like the front left had already turned in.
I'd like to see that again in slow-mo.
Well, did someone mention before that I think he had a little bit of a rub with one of the other guys a bit earlier, so maybe something's broken, but it certainly looked like an unusual way. I mean, Larry doesn't make those sorts of mistakes traditionally.
And the battle at the front, Mark Scaife, this is his teammate Jason Bright, but up front Scaife is just closing the gap to Ingle. He's within 1 second of the Castrol Commodore. Paul Radicic has bolted 9.7 seconds. He's almost got that lead out to over 10 seconds now over Ingle. This is the battle a bit further back in the pack. Jason Bright in 10th spot. And Johnson, classic example of what he was talking about the inconsistency of his car's performance this year. It just goes up and down like a yo-yo. Let's have a look at this Larry Perkins situation.
Larry was having a look down the inside. No, I think he might just have right lock on there.
Yeah, I could have understood.
He was right under the tail of the Kmart car and maybe just missed his braking marker. And he's
a long way.
Got it very deep at Wanneroo Beach.
And here we are. This is the battle for second place between Russell Ingle and Mark Scaife. Scaife's just been chipping away at it. 10th of a second here, 10th of a second there, and he's right on the back of the Castrol car now as they come out of the sweeper and punch up this hill once again. 5 laps remaining for our race leader, Paul Radicic. But second place, the battle for that is not over yet.
It's a return to form for Russell after having a difficult Canberra. Of course, he was strong up in Darwin, and then he had some unreliability problems. Scaife's right with him. You notice that Mark's been glancing in the mirror occasionally because he's got Seaton behind him. We've got 5 to go as they cross the line this time.
First time Paul Radicic has done a 60-second lap. It's out to 60.12. He's been running around in the low to mid 59s for the first part of the race. So everyone now pumping out to the 60-second bracket, but it's over. Look at the lead that Radicic. It's out to 10.4 seconds. He's been building at least half a second on this field every lap. Bad sportsmanship flag has just been shown to Morris, car number 29. He's in front of a pack of cars that involves Johnson and Bright. And Bright's actually lost a place to Johnson. So something going on back there. And Morris, if he continues to offend, will be brought in. Look at Scaife. Oh, he's giving him a little tag. Russell's wide of the line. And he's very gingerly on the throttle. So hard to get power to the ground with both these cars. This is just like ice skating, isn't it? Trying to get 600 horsepower to the ground. The car's sliding every way. Look at this attack now under brakes. Scaife. What is that off of? Moves over. Hard under brakes. Takes second place from Ingle.
I think it's just rubber build-up, Barry.
Yeah, it's just...
Ingle wants to argue, though. He's got a good run out of the corner onto the pit straight. Scaife's giving him room down the inside, but he's not close enough to attack under brakes. So Scaife takes second spot.
You can see how delicately... Hello and welcome.
Love tag.
You can see how delicately you have to use the throttle around this track, particularly when the grip's gone away from the rear of the car. That bottom corner, turn 6, where you come out of the gully, it's so difficult to get the cars to grip there, and you just can't drive them like a racing car. You've got to be so... It's like driving in the wet.
Look at offline here. You look at the rubber and stuff when you get offline. I mean, it's history.
This is the corner that really knocks the left rear tyre around, and this is the one where Russell was weak that last time through.
Watch this as they drive out of here. Look who's got the better. Look at Scaife. Just opening up 1 or 2 metres on him, just under power. That's where you find it. Just a little bit better drive coming out of that corner.
It's a fabulous run down the hill. It's a roller coaster ride over the brow into the braking area. The braking area is uphill. Here are the margins. There's Seaton. Further back it's Murphy, then Lowndes, then Kelly, then Morris.
Radisic's got 12.1 seconds now.
He's just been pulling out something like a half a second to a second a lap.
So whatever he's discovered in setup land, I think everybody else would like a dose of it.
Working a treat. He's doing it so effortlessly. Back in the 59s as well, a 59.87 for the race leader. Everyone behind him, 60-second bracket or higher. So this car working particularly well around here. Not nearly as so impressive from his teammate Stephen Johnson, who's struggling around the back of the top 10.
And it'll only be subtle, Mark. It'll be just a little difference here and there. Maybe they've got a ride height difference, a shock absorber setting, maybe a fraction of different spring rate, whatever, but it can be just enough sometimes. But Radisic has got his car working like a dream. His last lap through was at 59.8. He's the only person in the 59s, and we're well into the closing stages of this race.
Well, Radisic currently 14th in the Shell Championship Series points with only 2 laps remaining. Paul Morris continuing to fight on now. He falls into the clutches of Stephen Johnson. Headlights on.
Look at that rubber build-up Barry was talking about at the brow of the hill.
Just destroying the tyres around here. Morris now fighting a rear guard action. Johnson is in 9th position. Morris is in 8th. And Jason Bright is 10th. Look, can Johnson find a way past this big Kev racer before this race is over? 2 laps remaining.
Very dark outside now. I think they'll get through with just 2 laps to run, a little less for the leader now, but certainly the threat of showers in the late afternoon.
Look at this.
And Paul's got the elbows high. He's had a good showing today. He doesn't want to yield positions unnecessarily, and Stephen's applying the blowtorch.
You get the feeling something's going to happen down at the sweeper here.
Oh, look at this.
So often the car with tyres in slightly better condition can pounce, particularly on the exit. They get a sharper bite at the apex of the turn, a little bit more speed coming out.
Oh, a little bit of a lock-up.
Look at Junior now setting up for a big attack on the way out. Morris just
pinched the front right a little bit when it was unloaded going into the braking area. He might be fractionally stronger coming off, but it's not like he's got a car that's massively quicker at the moment than Morris. He's got a little bit of an edge on him, but it's hard to find a way around when cars are relatively equally matched.
Paul Morris has headed off on his final lap. This battle isn't over yet. This is for Paul Morris in 8th, Johnson in 9th, Bright in 10th. It's been so much of a story of this year for Jason Bright since he's taken over this new Holden Racing Team Commodore. His car just has been so uncooperative in terms of setup. It's been a real mind bender for the team trying to figure out just what it is this car needs. Every time they put it on the track early in the weekend, it's just so far from where they want to be, and then he has to work all through the weekend trying to get it dialed in. Here's our race leader and dominant race winner. 13 seconds the gap Paul Radisic has over the field. He's murdered him.
Great run from Radisic, and the Shell team is absolutely slaughtered the pack in round 6, race 1. It's a huge margin, and we're still waiting for second place to arrive at the final corner. Congratulations to Radisic, and here's the battle. It'll be Mark Scaife, the championship leader, Russell Ingall in hot pursuit in 3rd, and the gap at the end, 12.7 seconds. Then Seaton, Murphy, Lowndes, Kelly will be next. The dispute is going to be resolved in favour of Paul Morris with Stephen Johnson, then Jason Bright, who lost a place in that little battle. Gap then back to Barbagallo, McConville, then Bow, with big margin back to Stephen Richards, Ellery, Paul Wheel, Tony Longhurst, Marcus Ambrose, then Cameron McLean, David Bernard, Mark Larkham, Brad Jones, and then Garth Tander, followed by Rodney Forbes, and there is our race winner. And it all looks pretty cool and comfortable for Paul Radisic.
How easy is that when you're out in front and you got the setup right on the car now? Be cruising Sunday drive, or Saturday drive, I should say.
And that puts him in a great position for the second race. The order of the results in this event will determine the starting order for the second race.
It's just so typical of the domination we've seen from Craig Lowndes here over the years with the Holden Racing Team cars. Just so quick in qualifying, and then when the races start, it's just get a good start. See you later.
From pole to a win, it really does help when you start at the front, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does. It makes light work of it, and the Johnson team's done a fantastic job. You know, they've worked very hard on these cars to make it competitive, and it's really starting to show what it's capable of. So, this track, you just got to start up front, and you know, Paul Morris made my life a lot easier today, but that's what happens when you start at the front.
How's that winning margin? We thought that would be the last thing that would happen here.
What? Oh, sorry, I missed that.
I said, how about that winning margin? We thought that would be the last thing that would happen here.
Well, it's, yeah, who knows? It's motorsport, you know. Some days they go really well, and I was, you know, the other guys were racing, and I just had a clear track. And around here, if you've got a clear track, you know, you're able just to drive your own race.
Well, they look so slippery on the track. We've got to ask you, how much tyre do you think you have left?
Well, I was you know, saying to the guys, how far back are they? And they're going, you know, 10, 11, 12, slopping back. I think, gee, if I'm having trouble, they must be too. So it is very abrasive, and tyre wear is a real problem. It's just a matter of conserving them as best you can.
Well done, Paul. We've got another 2 to go.
Absolutely, thanks.